Today is June 2nd of 2008. We're in the living room of Miss Delores Dey, and she was born on March 13th, 1930. She lives on 725 Bowes Road in Lowell, Michigan. And I'm Sarah Light. I'll be interviewing her today, and Melissa Slater is doing the camera work. When were you born?
I was born March 13, 1930.
Where were you born?
In Grand Rapids at Butterworth Hospital.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I in early childhood in Grand Rapids, and then we moved out of the city. And
Right. Did you have any siblings?
Yes, my brother was born in 1932, and I had a sister born in 1935, and then another sister born in 1942, and one in 44.
What were their names?
My brother's name, it was named after my father, and his name was Harry George Wasorick Jr., and we always called him George. I always called him Georgie, but that he didn't like when he got to be a lieutenant in the Air Force. But and my sister's name was Lois, and the other one born in 42 was Mary Catherine, and we called her Mickey. And Mother always would rub her stomach and tell us children that whether boy or girl that baby was going to be called Mickey, so it was going to be Mary Catherine and Michael, I guess. I don't know. And then my mother told my dad that she didn't want to raise this child straggling along behind, so she wanted another one. So she had Sandra, and Sandra was born in 44.
Okay. What were your parents' occupations, and what were their names?
Well, my dad obviously was Harry Wasorick Sr., and he worked for his father in construction. They built homes all over Grand Rapids.
Wow. And was your mom a stay-at-home?
Oh, yeah, she was for a long time.
Yeah. What was the average day during your childhood?
Well, I don't remember. What my memories are when we lived in this upstairs. We had a upstairs, I guess, apartment you'd call it, and we had a front stairway and a back stairway, and we had an ice box. The iceman brought the ice up the stairs, and there was a pan of water under the ice box. When it melted, it went in that pan of water, and Mother or Dad were supposed to empty that. And because the floor in the apartment was crooked, and I remember you had to go through the kitchen to get in the bathroom, and a few times when you did that, you walked in ice cold water because one of them forgot to empty that. It woke you up in a hurry on the way to the bathroom.
Do you have any other memories of your childhood? Any good stories?
Well, I think it's an interesting story. When after my sister Lois was born at home, which was very interesting. Dad said to me, "You got to get up. You got to go in our bed." And my brother was in a 7-year crib in their room. They put me in the bed, and there was all this noise, and pretty soon a baby crying, and she was born in my bed. Which I thought was interesting, but they I was too young to remember all that. Mm-hmm. But the memory that I thought was interesting, we lived at that time on Coit Avenue, and it's now the street that runs right into Michigan Avenue, right by Butterworth Hospital. And when there was for some reason, and I'm not sure what the reason was, but my dad was gone, and the light bill and bills had to be paid, and Mother had the money. And so she told me I must have been about 6. Now, I was a scrawny little kid, and she sent me with a purse, a little purse, and her money, and I was to go walk down Coit towards Michigan, go down Michigan Street Hill to Division, and I had to go to the telephone company, the gas company, and Consumers Power, and pay all these bills. And she says, "Don't talk to anybody. Don't let anybody know you got any money." and you come home. And several years later, she was at my house when my oldest daughter was about that age, and she said something about it, about her size, and I said, "That's how old I was, Mother, when you had me do that." And she said, "That's very frightening. How did I do that?" I said, "You had to do it because Dad was gone, and those things had to be done." But that was scary. I mean, you don't talk to anybody, just go down there, and it was very frightening.
Yeah.
Then I remember it, so it must have been terrible.
Right. No kidding. So school. What school did you attend?
I started school at Coit School. It's the it was right there on Coit, and it's the one the Grand Rapids Public Schools have remodeled now. But I started school in September in kindergarten, and I was 5. And in the fall, when I went back, I was supposed to be in spring, excuse me, I was supposed to be in the second half of kindergarten, but there were so many kindergarten kids starting that they put me in the first grade. So I skipped a half a grade of school. So a few years later, we moved out on Alpine Avenue, and I went to Fairview School. It's a little school there, and they didn't have half grades. It was like a county school. I don't know. It was different rules. And so they put me in I was supposed to be in what they call 2-2 in September. They didn't have a 2-2. So they put me in the 3rd grade. So because I tried to work for a week or so, and they put me in the 3rd grade. So I skipped, in essence, another half a year. So that made me quite young.
Right.
And I didn't know it, but apparently the teachers thought it was okay because when they'd have a play, they'd move me down to be, I remember being an elf because I could learn the lines, and I was with the kids that were younger, but they couldn't learn the lines. So I remember my mother complaining about making the pointed shoes. She had stuffed brown fabric to make the pointed shoes. That was fun.
What activities did you participate in during school?
Well, in grade school, like I said, I was in the program, and I had to say, and then we moved into the city, and I went to Creston High School for I think it was the 8th grade, 7th or 8th grade, I'm not sure. And big school, little kids, big school. But it was an interesting experience. And then I went to high school there. And they had 7th and 8th grade in their school at the time, and then 9th, the other 4 grades. So that was busy. And then my family moved out to Comstock Park while I was in high school. So we lived out in the country on 6 Mile Road, and that school district would pay for students to go to either Creston or Union. And because I was already going to Creston, I stayed in Creston. Okay. So that was interesting. Right. I was busy in school, busy kid.
What classes did you take?
Well, I had to take, at that time you were required to take government. You couldn't graduate unless you had that semester of government. But because I was so young and I made out my program before I went in the 9th grade, you laid it all out. So I didn't schedule government until the last half of my senior year. And I took a lot of other stuff. When I was in the 10th grade, I always thought I wanted to be a teacher, so I was taking college prep. But then I wanted commercial courses too, and those were offered when I was in the 10th grade, and the school said you can't do that. They called them solids. You can't take 5 solids, and my mother said, well, let her try. And I looked and looked and looked for that report card to show it to you, because I think there was 1 A- on that whole report card for the 10th grade, which I thought was really something. Right. Except my typing teacher told me that if I had to get a job where I had to type, I'd never do it. They'd never hire me, and that was not true. But that was interesting. And then in you couldn't, the school was so crowded even then, and so you couldn't belong to really a lot of things until you were in the 11th grade because they just had so many kids. So when I was in the 11th grade, I was, let me see, I did a lot of stuff and I wrote it down here. I was in the, I was a reporter for the school paper. I worked in the library as a volunteer. We put up books and mended books and all that sort of stuff. And I took speech and debate. And I was in what they called the junior review that they had at Preston High School, in a line dance that was quite hysterical. One of the girls, we were to make our own costumes, and one girl didn't sew hers before the dress rehearsal. She just had it basted together, so when we were doing the dress rehearsal and she kicked, her costume ripped, and she tried to put she had her arms on the other girl's shoulders, and she was trying to keep her costume on while she did that. And at one of the performances, one of the girls' shoe straps broke, so when we kicked, the audience just went like this and came back while she was kicking. It was fun to see, and we had to keep on with our routine, which was fun. And then when I was a senior, I was a feature editor of the school paper, and so we got to go to the printer, and on the school bus, or on the public bus, we went to the printers and proofread our paper, and which was a big lark because you're out of school. And we did that, and that was fun. And I was on the debate team, and we'd go to schools and debate. And then we had a program in I think it was WLAV, where we discussed important issues for 16 and 17-year-olds. And like I said, mothers were the only ones that listened, but what could they do? So I was a busy kid.
Right.
Oh, and I was in the senior play when I was a senior, so I guess I was busy.
Right, sounds like it.
And then when I went to junior college, I only went for a year, but they had some kind of musical review, and I met kids from other schools, but we had a can-can routine, which was hysterical, but we thought we were good.
Right. What year did you graduate?
1947.
And how old were you?
17.
Yeah. Do you have a picture of your graduate?
Oh yes, I have a picture of me in my gown, lovely one in the garden.
Can you pull it up a little bit? Put it up.
Up?
Yep. There we go.
Got it?
Yep.
Right. So, after high school, what college did you attend?
I went to Grand Rapids Community College just for a year.
Okay.
And then I got a job working at a place called the Michigan Trust Company. And that was, since then, it's been merged with Old Kent. But I worked a great big bookkeeping machine. You had to punch all these numbers in and keep accounts, and that was fun.
What were the expectations for college? Were you expected to go to college?
No. My father didn't think girls needed an education, so he, like that much. He said, yeah, you don't need to do that. So I was bucking that, and like I said, we lived way outside of Comstock Park, so it was hard to get there. And I remember they gave freshmen 8 o'clock English classes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you had to be there. And I lived, a couple miles north of Comstock Park, so it got to be tricky to be there by 8 o'clock. And it was just hard. It was hard. Because I could take a Grand Rapids city bus from junior college to the end of the line in Comstock Park, but then I had to wait for a ride or walk home.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I got home, it was time to help with supper, and then I could do school. So it just got to be hard.
Right. Why did you only attend college for a year?
I just decided I didn't like it.
Right.
At that time, you had to take English, history, a language, and let me see, English, history, language, and a science. So you took one semester of zoology and one semester of botany to get your, and I thought, oh, this, and ancient history was something else. It was just boring.
Right.
Boring. It was glorified high school at that time. Only we had to have gym,
Oh, yeah.
had to have a white uniform, and it had to be clean, so you had to wash the dumb. I mean, it just was just not what I expected college to be.
So you said you went off and got a job after college. Did
Oh,
you
yeah.
do anything else? What else?
Well, that's all I worked and dated. I met my husband, and I met him when I was going to junior college, and a friend of mine set up this blind date, not with him, but with his friend, and he came along because he gave the friend a ride, and then he asked me out. And so we dated from probably 1947 until we got married in 1950.
So when did you move to Lowell?
We moved to Lowell in 1956.
Okay. And how old were your kids? Did you have any kids at the
I
time?
had just one, and I had two at the time because my youngest one, my oldest one was born in 52. That's Susan, and then Mary was born in 56, and then she was born in February. We moved here in the summertime.
Okay.
So we lived on Monroe Street here in Lowell for a long time.
What other kids do you have?
Barbara was born in 57, and Michael in 59, and Laura in 60, and Kathy in 64. So there are 6 of them.
Yeah.
5 girls and 1 boy.
Okay. So what about Mr. Santa Claus? How did you get involved with that in Lowell?
Well, when we lived there on Monroe, our neighbor, Mr. Boyce, came over to see my husband, and he asked him, and this was in 57, and he said to him, would you be Santa Claus for the moose? And here's my husband, 27-year-old, and 27, he said, would I what? And he said, would you be Santa Claus for us? Because the man that always has done it had an emergency, and he's in California. So my husband did it, and he was Santa Claus in Lowell for 36 years.
Wow.
He did it they got him a sprucier outfit, and he was in the parades, and one time the Chamber of Commerce thought it'd be fun if Santa Claus came by helicopter, and Santa Claus was afraid he was going to throw up all over. But he didn't, but he was very frightened of that because he said, I'm going to what? You're going to come by helicopter. It'd be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So he did all kinds of, he did it, and he enjoyed it very much.
Oh, do you have any memories of your husband being Santa Claus? What did your children think about that?
Well, my youngest one was scared to death of him. She was just so frightened, and she was, oh goodness, she must have been 9, and everyone told her Santa Claus was her father, but she didn't believe him. So one day he went in the bedroom and shut the door and put the whole outfit on, and he went outside from there and around and came to the front door, and of course all the kids, we all knew he was going to do this, and he had a present for her, and he knocked on the front door, and the kids said to her, Kathy, go answer the door. So she answered the door and just screamed. She was so frightened. Just could not believe it was her dad. But my son figured it out when he was only about 4. And he said, I know who Santa Claus is. And we said, what do you mean? It's Dad. How do you know it's Dad? I saw his hands. So after that, Santa Claus always wore gloves. Always. Because he said he don't need anybody recognizing me. I thought that was kind of fun.
What was Lowell like then compared to now?
Well, it was certainly different. I used to put my kids when we lived on Monroe, I put my kids in the, after their naps, clean them up and walk downtown and just go to the meat market, go to the A&P. I mean, you could do all those things. Go to the dime store. I remember one time I needed a spool of thread, this was so funny because I was walking with the children and I didn't have my purse or anything with me, and I thought, oh, I just need a spool of that thread to match something I was sewing, and I went into Carrie's, who sold thread, and I didn't have the 15 cents for spool thread, so they let me have it, and I had to go back in the next day with 15 cents because I did that for spool thread. Now, do you know how much a spool of thread is now?
No,
Well, it's a lot more than that.
Right. So what about your own participation in the community? You owned a store. Tell me
Well,
about that.
I opened my store. We moved from Monroe over to on Lincoln Lake to this great big house, and we did that in the early '60s. And then my husband opened his own business. He was working for Lowell Engineering down on Main Street, which his father owned. And then he got out of that and he opened his own business called Die Machine and Tool out on the corner of Lincoln Lake and Virginia's. And so that's what was going on. And then Kathy was born in '64, and I was busy. I had a campfire group, and let me see, and I was in charge of the candy sales that all campfire girls all sell candy. I was chairman of that for Lowell, which was an interesting job. Keep your kids out of the candy and try and sell it. And I did that for a while, and then the Chamber of Commerce, my husband was in the Chamber of Commerce, a member, and they needed someone to take minutes and do stuff. And so he said, well, my wife will do that. So I did that. And while we were active in the chamber, we tried to start, we couldn't figure out why Lowell residents went to Cascade or Ada for fireworks on the 4th of July. And we said, we're a bigger community than that. We can have fireworks. So we arranged things in town. We had, I think, 2 or 3 4th of July celebrations. A couple of them down at the fairgrounds and one at Richards Park. And we'd get artists to come in and have booths, and we all this stuff going on all day. We had the parade, and then we had fireworks at night. But it just didn't work out well because the club members couldn't get people to work in their booth because it was a holiday and they wanted to do something else. So it just kind of fell through. But it was a lot of work, and we tried.
Right.
Another thing we tried was to have, we had trailer rallies down at the fairgrounds. And the Chamber of Commerce sponsored them. We'd have someone be in charge. And then the merchants would have sidewalk sales. So that would get the people, when they registered with their trailer and paid a little fee to be there, then they got stuff that they could register at the merchants. It was to get them to come downtown and shop. And then they got something free or discounts or stuff to promote the town. So that was a busy time. And then in the early '70s, Shirley Richmond Smith and I decided our babies were getting ready for kindergarten, or they were in school, and we decided we'd open a store on Main Street. So there was a building. It was 215 West Main. And we made arrangements with the landlord to lease it, and we called it That Special Place, and we specialized in infants. We had stuff for babies and children's clothing, and then we had clothes for the half-size woman. And because I was a knitter and I loved to knit, and we had a corner where we had a big round table, and we had sold yarn and knitting needles, and I gave lessons to anybody that wanted to come in there and do that, besides waiting on people, because it was a small town thing and you could do that. And in between customers, Shirley and I, her sister was Barb Curtis, very involved in Showboat, so we would sit there at that round table and do mailings to promote the Showboat, because then we could just run them out the back door of the post office when we got the tray filled. So we did that in conjunction with working in the store. So, business was a lot different than it is now.
Right. What other organizations were you involved in?
Well, that was, then the city manager called and said, they called me Dode, and he said, "Hey, Dode, I made arrangements for the art train to come to Lowell, and I have openings for a couple committees. Which one do you want?" He didn't say, "Will you help?" He said, "Just which one do you want?" So I thought, well, I guess I'd take publicity. That sounded like an easier job than any. So I worked with Ellen Kinnebrew on publicity, and we decided, Ellen used to work with the Junior League in Grand Rapids, so she said, "Let's work with snob appeal." And I said, "Well, what in the world is snob appeal?" And she said, "Well, there's a certain element of people that will pay $15 or $20 to come to something if they can preview something." So what we did is we made arrangements for a wine and cheese party, and it cost $15 a person, and then they could see the train the evening before it officially opened to the public. And we did that. And the next day that it opened, we had the governor's wife come. Mrs. Milliken came. That was lovely. She drove up in a big black car, and she got out for the photographers with a bright red coat on, which was really, here I am. And she cut the ribbon, and we went on the art train. And the first time it came, it was behind Superior Furniture, and the track was a little tippy. And the people that went on it that night thought perhaps they'd had too much wine at the wine and cheese, but it was just a tippy track. That wasn't interesting. But then we had money left. And so the committee said, "Now what are we going to do?" And Mr. Kinnebrew, the artist that lived out on Beckwith, said, "Why don't we start an art council?" It's like years ago when the kids would say, "Let's do a play." Well, let's open an art council. So that's how we formed the art council, and we officially got that going in, I think it was 1979. And that was fun. And in my store, we answered the phone for the Chamber of Commerce, the Lowell Area Arts Council, and that special place. Because that was the same phone number for everybody. Because, again, it's a small town, and there just weren't things going on.
Right.
So that was interesting.
Right. What other, you helped out with Flat River Outreach Ministries?
Well, I
too,
do that now, but
Right.
Let me see. In 1982, the fall of 82, I had a heart attack, and I had to have open heart surgery in December. So I couldn't. I was in the hospital a long time, so I couldn't be at the store. So we had this partnership agreement, Shirley and I, that one of us could buy the other one out, and she didn't want to do that. So we closed the store in 83. So the Art Council had they needed someone to work in their office. So I applied for that job, and it was just afternoons. So we closed the store in 83, and I worked at the Art Council while they got their building ready, and kept the same number, which was interesting. It was still, and they still have that phone number, which I think is interesting. So then I was very involved in that. So I was doing Chamber of Commerce and Art Council. And then, let me see. I got involved with, I was trying to think, Art Council, Chamber of Commerce. I volunteered. No, I didn't start volunteering at the museum until my husband died. Or Flat River. That was a new thing when that started. And so now my schedule is Monday I sort clothes at the Flat River Outreach Ministry. Wednesday I have a quilt group that meets here at Snyder Manor from 9 to noon. And Thursday I work at the museum from 10 until whenever, generally 1 or 2. Fridays I go out to the Franciscan Light Processing Center and work out there, volunteer out there. And in between, when I docent at the museum or work on the floor at Flat River when the store's open.
Wow.
Otherwise, and I am secretary of the Friends of the Englehart Library.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I don't do much.
You make these gorgeous quilts. When did you start doing that? And
Well, I made the first Fallsburg quilt in 1982, and I made 12 of them for the art council.
Mhm.
And then I didn't do any for a while, and then a friend in my quilt group
Mhm.
said she wanted to make a quilt for Fallsburg, and I said, well, go for it. And she said, no, I want you to do it with me. So we did it together, and that collaboration was fun, and we did that.
Mhm.
So those are busy times.
Pan out these.
okay. And here's the example of your quilts.
See if I can get this.
There's this one.
Yeah, I got the one behind you too.
You can keep talking.
So, with your quilts, you've gotten awards for them for the Fallsburg Festival.
Well, yes, I got one from the. I got one from the art council for making 10 quilts. You got that?
Yep.
And then my husband and I were named Persons of the Year in 1990 together. They did a joint thing. That was fun.
That's cool.
Good.
So, just to kind of go back a little bit, what was it like raising a family in Lowell?
Well, it was very nice because my children love to swim, and so by us living there on Lincoln Lake, they could ride their bikes down to the pool, and they were on swim team, and they competed in that, and then the girls did synchronized swimming, and they loved that, and that was fun for them, and they could just be there. It was safe for them to do it, and they were there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived there on the corner of Lincoln Lake and Spring, and many my children had many friends that lived out in the country. Took a school bus, and Fridays during the day, mothers would drive in and knock on the side door, and they said, well, this is for Jane, or this is for Sally, or this is for, and it was a brown bag of clothes, so their child would not take the school bus home on the day there was a football game or a basketball game or something. They'd come to our house, change their clothes, leave their school books, and go on a bus to a game, and then they'd pick their kids up later at night, but they'd say to me, it's so nice to live in the country. I said, yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah.
Because my kids could take the bus or walk to school, walk to the movies, walk to the showboat. It was just a wonderful experience for them. My oldest girl you could sing in the showboat chorus when you were in the 9th grade. She could hardly wait to get in the 9th grade to do that. And they went to all the practices and sang in the showboat chorus, and they just don't do that anymore. They just can't do that because it's not there. And my kids could go to the library. Like I said, they went to the pool. They went to the movies. All that stuff that's just not there anymore.
Right.
And it was just a freedom. I had a neighbor who's. They had 5 children, and one of her girls wanted to go to the movie, and her mother said she could go, and she told her mother she was going with a girlfriend, and her mother said fine. And the movie started at 7, and she lived right across the driveway from me, and the kids all the whole neighborhood went to the movies, and her mother went down to the theater and bought a ticket and sat in the back row and watched her daughter's behavior with some boy. And just before the lights came on, the mother left and came home. And she said to her daughter, how'd you like the movie? She said, oh, Mom, it was really good. And she said, oh, did you meet anybody? No, I just sat with my brother and sister. She said, oh, really? That isn't what I saw. Which was, you just can't do that now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just fun. And the girl was just horrified.
So, where are your children now? Are they close by?
Well, no, my oldest daughter has a business up in Kingsley, that's just south of Traverse City. It's called Whispering Needles, and the business, they do commercial sewing for a boat company in Holland, and they make 100 and 200 and so on $1,000 boats, and she does all the bedspreads and dust ruffles and pillows and all that for them. It's all commercial, and she also works for interior decorators. My next daughter, Mary, is married to a brunette who used to live in Lowell, and they now live in Holland. And Mary works for her church, and I can't tell you now exactly what her job is, but she's there, supposed to work there 20 hours a week, and she's works many more. Mm-hmm. My daughter, Barbara, was widowed in 2 years ago, and she lives out on Beckwith, and she has 2 sons. One lives in Florida, but one just graduated from Lowell High School, and he was all conference golf. That's very exciting. And let me see. And my son Michael has a Bachelor of Science degree, and he works for the St. Clair County Health Department, and he checks for contamination of waters coming into Lake Huron and septic tanks that are any land contamination. That's what his job is. And my daughter Laura, the next one, works for River Valley Orthopedics in Grand Rapids. She scheduling appointments and surgeries and all that stuff. And my youngest daughter Kathy lives in Marshall with her family, and she has a new job, and I don't know who she works for, but she travels all over the state, and she sets up conferences for people that are having all kinds of conferences. So they're all busy, very, very busy.
And I know we kind of went over this, but just to kind of wrap it up. So what are you doing now in the community? What
am I doing? Well, as I said,
right.
Mondays I work for Flat River. And Tuesdays I make dentist and doctor appointments, and then I belong to a group called Bookworms. We meet once a month in fall through spring, and we discuss books, which is very fun. Mm-hmm. And Wednesdays I have a quilt group that we call Keepsake Quilters, and we meet here at Snyder Manor from 9 to noon on Wednesdays. And Thursdays I work at the museum. And Fridays I work out at the Franciscan Nuns. And Saturdays are whatever. and I frequently go to church Saturday night at 5 o'clock, because Sunday's definitely a day of rest. But that's it. I try to keep busy.
All right. Well.
And I knit all the time. And I quilt. And that's about it. And read.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Busy.
Thank you very much.
And you're welcome. He's young kid. He's 49, my son.
Okay.
And this is his oldest, and she is going to be 11. And this one is 5.5. He was born on my birthday, which I think is fun.
Yeah.
And then they had this one, and he was just a year old yesterday, okay. 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
And then Kathy is the baby. It was at her wedding that I had my heart attack, which was interesting. And so she had Jimmy and Tony and Samantha. Samantha just graduated.
Mm-hmm.
No, she didn't. She's graduating Saturday. Sorry.
Okay. Wow.
This kid is going. Oh, you should see this one. My gosh, he's big. They took pictures of us Saturday, and I'm standing between him and his sister,
mm-hmm.
and he's probably 6'8". I bet he weighs 300 pounds. He is just huge. And he's like a teddy bear. Aww. He's just a darling boy. And she's probably, she's easy 6 foot tall. Mm-hmm. So here I am, 5'3", between these two great big kids. It looks like a sandwich.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Wow. All right.
But there are now 16. So you gotta get Jimmy in there. Can you move down? All right. This is a picture of all 6 of my children, and this is a picture of all the in-laws and outlaws and all the little kids, because each one of these has a spouse. So well, they did. Barbara doesn't anymore. But there were 12. You know, they each got married,
Yeah.
and 16 grandchildren, which I think is amazing.
Very much so.
Okay, and
16. When I had my heart attack, I only had 2.
and
It was a frightening experience for everybody because there was a straight line in the ambulance.
Well.
And they defibrillated me and brought me back to life. And look at what look what happened.
Right. There must have been a reason.
okay.
The Lowell Area Historical Museum is proud to sponsor community oral history interviews. The Lowell Area Historical Museum educates, enriches, and inspires our community and visitors through the preservation and presentation of Lowell area history. For reservations and more information, contact the Lowell Area Historical Museum at 616-897-7688.